Good morning, students. Tomorrow we are discuss the basic components of project management. That is very essential elements related to any enterprises, and that is tomorrow we are discuss the project financing, and it means that the basic financing means the of arrangements of funds in enterprises. Yeah, how to arrange the funds in different sources, that is finance. And there is a basic introduction of project finance is the lifeblood and the nerve center of the business, irrespective of its size, kinds, or nature. Just as circulations of blood is essential in the human bodies for maintaining life. So that's why financial is very essential for smooth running of the business. And after that, the project manager has to acquire the funds from the different sources to meet the financial requirement of the business, and to planning the how to maintain our requirement. And adequate finance is necessary for the efficient operation of the business. Neither any business can be established or its the develop or expansion is possible without adequate finance. It means that finance is a very important part of any business. Without finance, we are not developed any business activity. That is that is the very important questions arise in entrepreneurs or enterprises or companies, is how to arrange the funds. On the basis of the time, financial requirement of a business can be divided into the three major parts of arrangement of financing. That is, number one part is long term requirements of funds, and the second is medium terms requirement of funds, and the third is short term requirements of funds. It means that we have a three major parts, that is the long term arrangement, medium term arrangements, and the short term arrangements. We are going to, before we are going to long term requirement of the funds, you you know that कि how to arrangement of the funds means that, तो कि कंपनी को ये बेसिकली ये सोचना पड़ेगा कि उसका जो बेसिक रिक्वायरमेंट है वो चाहे लॉन्ग टर्म के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से है या शॉर्ट टर्म के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से है या मीडियम टर्म के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से है, एज पर सीबी गाइडलाइंस we have some criteria of the short term and long term. You know what criteria? If you have running a business in more than 3 years, it means the long term, and if you have the less than 1 year, less than 3 years, the short terms. And some the different rules and regulations regarding the shares and securities. And shares and securities is a part is the more than 1 year is a long term, and the less than 1 year is a short term. Means that long term requirements of the funds means the requirements of the funds more than 5 or 7 years are called the long term requirements of the funds. You know, you know long term funds requirements more than 5 or 7 years are called the long term requirement of the fund. Long term requirements of the funds should be met from long term sources. Long term funds are required for the purchase of fixed assets, arrangement of the apartments of the working capital, and the payment of the primary expenses, and the fixed assets including land, building, plants and machinery, furnitures, etc. Fixed assets are used in the business for a long period to earn a profits. It means that the primary expenses means the primary expenses means the basic expenses are incurred by the promoters at the time of the promotion of the company. Similarly, the working capital is also needed for the business. So it means that कि एक तरीके से तो हम ये कहना चाह रहे हैं कि हमारी जो एसेट्स होनी चाहिए वो 5 to 7 years के टाइम पीरियड के दौरान रहनी चाहिए, और दूसरी तरीके से हम ये कहते हैं कि जब हम इस तरीके से इसका अरेंजमेंट करेंगे तो हमारे सामने ये क्वेश्चन आएगा कि भाई हम जो है अगर हम इस फंड्स का अरेंजमेंट हम कर रहे हैं तो फंड्स को अरेंज करने के लिए मतलब फिक्स्ड एसेट्स के फंड्स को हम अगर मेंटेन कर रहे हैं तो हमें फिक्स एसेट्स के फंड्स को मेंटेन करने के लिए हमें ये देखना पड़ेगा कि फिक्स एसेट्स का जो पार्ट होगा वो कैसे अरेंज होगा. मतलब फिक्स एसेट्स मीन्स लॉन्ग टर्म फंड्स. लॉन्ग टर्म फंड्स मीन्स invest in machinery, plants, land and building, furniture and others. So that the long term funds requirement, तो आप लोगों को ये ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा कि लॉन्ग टर्म जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स ऑफ द फंड्स का क्राइटेरिया है वो है 5 to 7 years. It means that your establishment limit is 5 to 7 years of business. Okay, and the second is medium term requirements of funds. It means that the funds occurs for a period of 1 to 5 or 7 years. Such funds are required for the project which are neither of a fixed nature or nor of the current nature. These funds are needed for the replacement of machinery and equipments or heavy improvements in them, for research and the development and the heavy expenditure on advertisements. It means that, in other words, deferred revenue expenditure. The nature of deferred revenue expenditures is considered in the medium terms requirements of the funds. And the third term is short term requirement of the funds. Short term funds are needed for a period of less than 1 year. Short term funds are needed for the expenses of routine nature like purchase of goods, payments in the salary, office expenses, electricity, rent. Therefore, the arrangement of the adequate working capital has to be made under the short term financing. Short term financing requirement should be met from the short term sources. It means that it is a long term requirements of the funds means investment criteria, investment limit is 5 to 7 years, more than 5 to 7 years. And the short medium terms investment medium term requirement of the funds means 1 to 5 or 7 years, and the less than 1 years is going to short term requirement. And the short term requirement funds is also includes in working capital. And what is working capital? So what is working capital means? It means the operating capital of any business, and that you require the some amount of capital. Then you are deciding the sources of finance. It is the word nothing that the long term financial requirements should be met from the long term sources, medium term requirements from the medium term sources, and the short term requirements from the short term sources. Therefore, a project manager must maintain the proper balance in the long term, medium term, and the short term. So you have must be design a complete programs of long term requirements, medium term requirements, and the short term requirement. Sometimes it is a difficulties to differentiate in the long terms and the medium term sources. Certain business use the funds acquired from the short term sources for the purchase of fixed assets, but it is not considered the proper as a part the principle of the project management. To show that it decrease the liquidity of the business, and the problem of the prompt payment may arise. Similarly, if the funds acquired from the long term sources are used for fulfilling the short term requirements, it will be misutilization of the funds, as the funds of the business will be remain unutilized, which will be reduced profitability. And the project manager should also maintain the proper balance is owned capital and the borrowed capital. If all the requirement of the business can be met out of equity capital and the reserve and surplus, it will be the benefits of the trading on equity. On the other hand, if the all financial needs are met by the borrowed capital, there would be the fixed burden of the interest on business. Therefore, it can be said that through the financial planning, proper balance between owned capital and the borrowed capital, and amongst the long term, medium term, and the short term sources should be established. The sources of financing long term, medium term, and the short terms are the different of the business. The different sources of the finance can be. It means that जब हम सोर्सेज ऑफ फाइनेंस को जब हम डिफाइन करने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं, तो उस टाइम पे जब हम पहला हमने क्राइटेरिया बना दिया कि हमने जो है ये लॉन्ग टर्म होगा, ये आपका शॉर्ट मीडियम टर्म होगा, और ये आपका शॉर्ट टर्म होगा। हमें करना क्या है कि जब हम ये डिसाइड कर चुके होते हैं कि ये लॉन्ग टर्म रिक्वायरमेंट के लिए यूज़ होगा, तो लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए जो फंड्स हमने लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए रखा है वो हम लॉन्ग टर्म में ही इन्वेस्ट करें। जो हमने मीडियम टर्म के लिए रखा हुआ है उसको हम मीडियम टर्म में ही यूज़ करें, और जो आपका शॉर्ट टर्म के लिए रखा हुआ है उसको हम शॉर्ट टर्म के लिए यूज़ करें। अगर हम ऐसा नहीं करेंगे तो हमारे सामने प्रॉब्लम ये होगी कि हमने जो लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए पैसा रखा है वो अगर हमने शॉर्ट टर्म के लिए खर्च कर दिया, तो जब हमें लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए खर्च करना होगा तब हमें नहीं मिल पाएगा। और अगर हमको मीडियम टर्म का पैसा हमने लॉन्ग टर्म में खर्च कर दिया, तो जिस टाइम मीडियम टर्म के लिए हमें रिक्वायरमेंट आएगी, हम उस टाइम पे हमारे पास फंड्स नहीं होगा। तो इससे होगा क्या कि जो आपकी डेफिशिएंसी है, जो आपके लॉस की रेशियोज़ है, वो रेशियोज़ जो है आपका बहुत जल्दी आ जाएगा। जो सिचुएशन आपके अगले 10 सालों में 15 सालों में आनी चाहिए थी, वो सिचुएशन आपकी फिर 5 इन 5 years में आ जाएगी। तो दैट इज अरेंजमेंट ऑफ sources of finance, and the different sources of the finance can be, that is, the sources of long term finance mean the sources of the long term finance can be divided into two parts: owned capital and borrowed capital. Owned capital means the owner's own investment, the owner's own investment value. And the second is borrowed capital means which capital, which capital taken from any outer sources of finance. It means that the own capital is provided by the owners of the business, included ordinary shares, preference shares, and the reserves. And the other hands, the borrowed capital is raised as the long-term loans from the borrowers. Borrower means company, banks, or etc. The main sources of the borrowed capital includes debentures, bonds, lease financing, long-term loans. In India, specialized financial institutions have been established for the providing long-term loans. That is the basic sources of long-term finance. Okay, and the second is medium-term sources of medium-term loans. अब पहले हमने देखा कि लॉन्ग टर्म फाइनेंस का सोर्स क्या होगा। अब लॉन्ग टर्म फाइनेंस का सोर्स क्या है, उसकी ओन कैपिटल है या बोरोड कैपिटल है। वो जो ओन कैपिटल है वो उसकी क्या है, जो ओन कैपिटल मीन्स जो उसकी खुद उसने जो इन्वेस्ट की है, मतलब कि जो उसका ओनर है वो लेके आएगा। और बोरोड कैपिटल मीन्स जो उसने जो है बोरोवर से बोरो कर रखी है। तो बोरोवर कोई भी हो सकता है, फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन हो सकता है, फाइनेंशियल बॉडीज हो सकती है, बैंक्स हो सकता है, या इंडिविजुअल हो सकता है। तो ये आप देखेंगे तो ये जो बेसिक पार्ट है, इट मीन्स कि लॉन्ग टर्म रिक्वायरमेंट्स ऑफ द फंड्स है। ओके, एंड द सेकेंड इज sources of medium term loans. Medium term loans can be made available for the various sources. Medium term sources includes loans from financial institutions, redeemable preference shares, redeemable debentures, public deposits, purchase under the hire purchase system, or accumulated profit. It basic are the basic sources of medium term loans. Okay, this are the basic sources of medium loan sources. And the next is sources of the short term loans. Sources of the short term loans funds includes the bank loans, public deposits, advances from the customers, provision for taxation, and the credit purchase or the commercial papers, etc. That means that we have a three major sources. Long term sources means borrowed capital and owned capital. Okay, and the medium term means if you have any securities. Security means The sources of includes the loans from the financial institutions or redeemable preference shares, redeemable debentures or public deposits, etc. Okay, and the third sources is short-term loans. Short-term loans means bank loans, public deposits loans, advances from customers or provision for taxation, credit purchase or the commercial papers, etc. It is a short-term loans. Okay. Next is sources of long term and the medium term फाइनेंस. अब हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि जो सोर्सेज ऑफ लॉन्ग टर्म फाइनेंस के क्या हो सकते थे. दैट इज इक्विटी शेयर्स. इट मीन्स दैट equity shares have an important place in the capital structure of the company. Ordinary share capital is the based debt and preference shares capital. Ordinary shareholders are the actual owners of the company and have the full voting right. They take part in the management of the company through the appointment of directors. They have unlimited interest in the incomes and assets assets of the company. The main objective of the company is to maximize the value of the shares held by the shareholders. It means that equity shares is a documents of investors. Sorry, equity shares or equity certificate is the documents of investors to invest in company, and in the forms of if he has some voting rights or not, if we have a claim of dividend or not the claim of dividend, etc. Okay, and there are the how to. Therefore, the following are the main characteristics of the equity shares. Means maturity. How to mature? No, what are the process of maturity? From the ordinary shares, company gets the fixed capital for which the company is not bounded to pay during the lifetime. It means that the shareholders can divide their capital only at the time of liquidation. If we are not liquidated, then he cannot include the shareholders' demands. At the time of the liquidations, they will get their capital back only if there is any balance left after the pay of other liabilities. Company cannot be blind its shareholders to sell their holdings. It means that the maturity of equity shares or ordinary shares, the company gets the fixed capital for which the company is not bound to pay during the lifetime. कंपनी कभी भी जो है इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर्स को पे करने के लिए कोई भी लाइफ टाइम के लिए वो कंपेल नहीं होती है. अब वो उसको रिटर्न करती है तो इट इज़ कंपनी इंटरेस्ट, या वो उसको जब कंसीडर करती है तो कंसीडर कब करती है, जब कंपनी लिक्विडेट होती है. मतलब कि जब कंपनी बंद होने की कंडीशन में आती है, समापन की कंडीशन में आती है, उस टाइम पे हम जो है कंसीडर रखते हैं. हम कहते हैं कि भाई ये जो है प्रेफरेंस के लिए रखा था, ये हमने इक्विटी के लिए रखा था, ये हमने डिवेंचर्स के लिए रखा था. तो वो हम एक क्राइटेरिया बनाते हैं कि अगर इफ पॉसिबिलिटी है तो वी कैन पे. एंड द थर्ड इज एंड द नेक्स्ट इज claims of income. Equity shareholder companies are the retail owners of income of the company. Their right on income left after the payment of the interest or preference dividend. Even if the company has profit, the shareholders can be forced the company to pay the dividend to them. Whole of the profits can be blocked back for the expansions, development, and the strengthening the financial position of the company. In the actual practice, the company pays dividends at a reasonable rates in the event of the adequate earnings so that the shareholders may have faith in the company. No rate of the dividend fixed. It depends on the policy of the management and the quantum of profit. Okay, and the equity shareholders cannot be claimed any profit, any dividend. It is totally depends on company. Okay, मतलब कि क्लेम के लिए जो है कोई जो क्लेम्स किसी भी इनकम के लिए अगर वो क्लेम करना चाहे तो वो क्लेम नहीं कर सकता. क्यों नहीं कर सकता? क्योंकि उसके पीछे जो करने के पीछे का जो उसका बेसिक रीज़न है वो रीज़न ये है कि वो उसको जो है कंपनी कंपेयर नहीं है इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर को, इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर वाले को, कि वो उसको डिविडेंड दे या प्रॉफिट दे या फिर इंटरेस्ट दे. ओके, एंड द नेक्स्ट वन, क्लेम ऑन एसेट्स. बीइंग द residual owners, the ordinary shareholders have the last claim on the assets of the company. ठीक हो गया. At the time of the liquidation, the assets company are not sold, and the first of all the claims of the creditors and the preference shareholders. ठीक है ना, मतलब कि वो तो ठीक है, लेकिन क्या है कि जब लिक्विडेशन होता है, लिक्विडेशन के टाइम पे सबसे पहले हम पेमेंट किसको करते हैं? क्रेडिटर्स को पेमेंट करते हैं. फिर हम प्रेफरेंशियल शेयर होल्डर्स को पेमेंट करते हैं. जब वो सेटल हो जाते हैं तो तब हम किसको करते हैं? तब हम फिर ऑर्डिनरी शेयर होल्डर्स की तरफ जाते हैं. अदरवाइज़ जो है हम इस तरीके से नहीं करते हैं. एसेट्स पे भी जो है, जब एसेट्स होती है तब भी हम उनको प्योरली उनको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट नहीं करते हैं. एंड नेक्स्ट इज कंट्रोल. Ordinary shareholders have the full right of management and the control of the company. Each shareholder has the voting right in the meeting of the company is the proportions to his the holdings in the company. For the operation and the control of the company, they appoint directors who act as their representatives. They have the right to remove the directors also. If a shareholder can present himself in the meeting of the company, he can use proxy. So that is the basic control. And the next is right of preemption. Although the ordinary shareholders cannot force the company to distribute dividends, yet they have been given right to have the proportionate interest in the assets, income and the control of the company. For this purpose, they have got the preferential right to purchase the new shares issued by the company. It is the statutory obligations of the company that it should be present the new shares to the existing shareholders first. The right of the ordinary shareholders is called the right of the pre-assumptions. Each shareholders can exercise that the right in the proportion to the share held by him. That is हम किस तरीके से कह सकते हैं? हमें कह सकते हैं जैसे अगर किसी के पास 200 शेयर्स हैं, the company had totally issued capital of 200 shares. He will have the right to purchase the 10% of the new shares of the company. तो उसके पास क्या होता है कि जो उसके पास हम 10% का उसके पास राइट होता है. तो वो सिर्फ जो है 200 के जो शेयर्स हैं उसको इशू कैपिटल मान सकता है. ओके, अब उसके बाद देखिए प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स. एंड द प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स मीन्स Preference shares is a capital is another source of the providing the long-term finance. That means that the preference shares are those shares which have the preferentially rights regarding to the payment of dividend and the repayment of the capital over the equity shareholders. Equity shareholders cannot be paid any dividend unless dividend at the fixed rate is to is paid to preference shareholders. In other words, they are paid the dividend out of the earning after the interest and tax, but before any dividend to equity shareholders. Yes, okay. मतलब कि हम जो है पहले प्रेफरेंस को क्रेडिट करते हैं, हम इक्विटी वाले को बाद में दे उसके बाद में जाते हैं कि भाई इसको जो है अगर पहले प्रेफरेंस को देने के बाद अगर उनको बचा तब हम उसकी तरफ जाते हैं. अब इसके पास जो कि द मेन करेक्टरिस्टिक्स कहते हैं मेच्योरिटी. और मेच्योरिटी की अगर आप बात करें तो द कंपनी गेट्स द फिक्स्ड कैपिटल from the preference shares like the equity shares and it is not bounded to repay it, but many times the company issued the redeemable preference shares and the fixed the time of their redemption under the terms of issue. Such shares are called the redeemable preference shares. Redeemable preference shares are redeemed at the option of the company. But according to the terms of issue, sometimes the companies issues the convertible preference shares also. As the results, the preference shareholders have the options to convert their shares into equity shares of the company. Okay, उनके पास ये ऑप्शन रहता है कि भाई वो जो है प्रेफरेंस से इक्विटी में करवा लें तो या इक्विटी से प्रेफरेंस में करवा लें, उनके पास वो उनका राइट होता है. ओके, अब क्लेम ऑफ द इनकम की अगर बात करें तो इसमें वो चीज़ इस पे वो क्लेम कर सकता है बिकॉज क्योंकि जो है प्रेफरेंस है वो उसको क्योंकि उसको कंपनी ने पहले से प्रॉमिस किया हुआ है कि भाई आप जो है जब आप कंपनी के शेयर खरीदोगे तो हम आपको जो है ईयरली इतना डिविडेंड देंगे या 10% इंटरेस्ट देंगे, तो दैट इज़ द क्लेमिंग ऑफ द इनकम. And the main objective of the cumulative preference shares is to be the attract the investors to invest in the company. And the next is claims of assets. Although assets of the company are not the capped as security with the preference shareholders, yet they are the claim on assets are better to the equity shareholders. At the time of liquidation of the company, the capital of preference shareholders will be paid back to them before making payment to equity shareholders. Okay, and the next is blocking back of the profit. We have already discussed the equity shares and the preference shares as a long-term the sources of the finance. Beside the blocking back of the profit is considered as an important internal source of finance. Okay, ये भी एक तरीके का internal source of finance है. It means that when the company does not distribute the whole or its the profit, okay, and wish to reinvest a part of it, it is called the blocking back of profit or रिटेंशन ऑफ अर्निंग. ओके, सपोज मतलब ये कहने का मतलब ये है कि जब हम जो हमारा डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिंग प्रॉफिट होता है अगर हम उसमें से भी कुछ पार्ट बचा लें और उसको री इन्वेस्ट कर दें तो हम ये कहते हैं कि हमने अपने उसमें से जो है जो प्रॉफिट में से था उससे भी जो है हमने लेके हमने उसको इन्वेस्ट कर दिया. तो इस प्रोसेस की वजह से क्या होता है कि जो बेसिक इसको हम कहते हैं सेल्फ फाइनेंसिंग और इंटरनल फाइनेंसिंग. रिटेंशन ऑफ अर्निंग इज मेड इन द forms of the various reserving funds such as general reserve, dividend, equalization funds. Therefore, every year after the payment of the tax on the income and the distribution of a part of its dividend, the balance is retained in the business. It means the retained earning can be used to meet the long term or the short term requirements of the capital. It is easy and the economical sources of finance which can be used for the expansion and modernization of the business. These accumulated profits can be used to issue the bonus shares and the means that मतलब ये कहने का मतलब ये है कि जब कंपनी जो है क्या करती है कि अपने जो शेयर होल्डर्स होता है जो ऑलरेडी पहले से इन्वेस्ट किया है उसको अगर मान लीजिए उसको प्रॉफिट नहीं देना दे पाई तो वो उससे क्या उसको एक ऑफर दे देता है कि भाई आप जो यू परचेज द बोनस शेयर्स। अब बोनस शेयर्स कैसे देगी? अब बोनस शेयर्स का मतलब ये है कि आपको उसी वैल्यू के आपको उसी वैल्यू के शेयर्स बोनस शेयर्स आपको मिल गए। मतलब 10 आपके पास शेयर्स थे और आपने 10 आपको बोनस मिल गए। इट मीन्स कि आपके 20 शेयर्स की वैल्यू अब वो हो गई। तो उससे क्या होता है कि हमें ये लगता है कि हमारे नंबर्स ऑफ शेयर्स बढ़ गए, कंपनी को लगता है कि हमारे इनके इन्वेस्टर बढ़ गए, इसकी वजह से मैं अर्न करूँगी और हम सोचते हैं कि हम इसकी वजह से अर्न करेंगे। तो दैट इज़ अ बेसिक प्रोसेस। ओके, मतलब इसको हम ये कह सकते हैं कि दिस इज़ द बेसिक एटीट्यूड्स ऑफ मैनेजमेंट। मैनेजमेंट का एटीट्यूड से है कि मैंने इसको इनको इन्वेस्ट के लिए प्रमोट कर दिया तो जिसकी वजह से इन्होंने मेरी कंपनी में 20 की जगह 20 और ले लिए, 40 ले लिया। इसके बाद देखिए दूसरा इसका सोर्स इनका एक और दूसरा सोर्स है फाइनेंस का, वो है डिबेंचर्स। डिबेंचर्स आर एन द इम्पॉर्टेंट सोर्स ऑफ लॉन्ग टर्म फाइनेंस of the company. With the help of these sources, company arranged for finance for meeting the requirements of development and the modernization after its establishment. The funds acquired by the issuing debentures are in the forms of loans and its holder are the creditors of the company. It means that as per Company Act 1956, the debenture is in kinds of in kinds of loan taken from the customers, taken from the investors, and the debentures is one of the types of loan from loan from not taken from financial institutions, taken from debentures holders, means public. It means that we provide the interest rate. Suppose we companies ABC Limited issues 10% debentures. 10% debentures means the rate of interest is 10%. The company pay 10% interest in the debenture holders. There is at the time of the liquidation, debenture holders is treated as the general creditors. But in India, there is no difference in the debentures and bonds. Both are used as synonyms. Recently, survival financial institutions such as IDBI, IFCI, ICICI, and the infrastructural companies have issued the bonds which are unsecured, but the debentures are secure. It is the first time in India. And the next is characteristics of the debentures. Maturity. Maturity means when the debentures will be redeemed in the depends on the numbers of the factors including the conditions of the capital and the money market at the time of the issue of debentures, current rate of interest and the goodwill of the company. The debenture holders do not want that company may continue to use their funds for a fairly long period. Rather, they want the liquidity and the security of their money. If there is a greater risk, the debenture holder will wish in the early payment. Then the debentures can be the redeemed as well as irredeemables. The debentures for the redemption of which the no date is fixed and the redeemed at the option of the company or the irredeemable debentures. In India, such the debentures are not prevalent. And the claim के लिए क्या हो सकता है? Firstly, the shareholders cannot be paid any dividend without the payment of the interest to debenture holders. Secondly, the income from the interest on the debentures on the debentures holders is the fixed and has to pay essential whether the income of the company is more or less than it. बिल्कुल. If the company fails to pay, then the regular interest and the debenture holders can be the initial legal actions taken from the liquidation of the company. And the third is claims or claims on assets. And the next is controlling powers. And the next is loans from the financial institutions. The financial institutions provides the assistance in the following manners, that is, they provides the long term and the medium term loans to the industrial units to assist in the management at the time of their promotions for the expansion and the development. And the next is to provide them the technical and the financial consultancy at the time of need. And the next is to subscribe for the shares and the debentures issued by the industrial units. And the next is to take the part in the underwritings, shares and the debentures issued to the public. And the next is to guarantee the loan given by the scheduled bank. And the next is to provide the refinancing facilities for the loans given by the scheduled bank and the cooperative societies to the industrial units. And the next is to guarantee the different payments. The next terminology is public deposits. Public deposits are an important source of the medium terms and the short term finance of the company in India. This is a traditional sources of the finance. After the third 5-year plan, there has been the tremendous increases in the public deposits in India. Normally, public deposits are accepted for a period of 3 years. From 1st April 1987, the maximum rate of interest of the public deposits can be 14%, and the private sector companies cannot be accept a deposits of more than the 35% of their paid up capital, and the free reserve in which the shares of the public can be 25% maximum, and the 10% can be accepted from the shareholders. The public sector companies can get the all 35% deposits from the public. It means that अगर हम ये कहें कि इंडिया में रिसेशन आएगा और रिसेशन आने से जो है कंपनी डूब जाएगी, तो इस तरीके की पॉलिसी से हम डूब नहीं सकते। रिसेशन आएगा तो हमारे अपने तरीके से आएगा, इसके हमारी वजह से कुछ नहीं होने वाला। मतलब क्योंकि कंपनी को कोई बहुत बड़ा नुकसान नहीं होगा, क्योंकि उसके पीछे का रीज़न ये है कि कंपनी की जो इन्वेस्टमेंट पॉलिसी है वो ऑलरेडी पहले से सेफ है। There are the many reasons for the attractions of the companies towards the public deposits. भाई हाँ, पब्लिक डिपॉजिट्स के लिए कंपनी बहुत तरीक़ों से जो है वो अट्रैक्ट कर सकती है। द कॉस्ट ऑफ दीज द डिपॉजिट्स इज़ लेस देन द रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट ऑफर्ड बाय द बैंक। बिल्कुल डेफिनेटली उनकी जो कॉस्ट है और जो वो ऑफर कर रहे हैं उसके बीच में बहुत बड़ा गैप है। देयर इज़ अ नो नीड टू मॉर्गेज द एसेट्स फॉर द पब्लिक डिपॉजिट्स, बिकॉज अगर मैं अपनी सैलरी स्लिप को पूरा जो है मॉर्गेज करता हूँ कि मेरे यहाँ से आएगा और मैं यहाँ से आपको लोन को पे करूँगा, तो फिर मेरी एसेट्स को मॉर्गेज रखने का क्या प्रोविज़न है? क्यों? जबकि अब अगर मतलब इंडिया में जो लोन लेने का जो प्रोसेस है वो सबसे सबसे ज़्यादा सेफ है। तभी तो आप देखिए कि आज का जो केसेस है, आपने नीरव मोदी को देखा, जितना उसने अमाउंट लिए नहीं लिया उससे ज़्यादा उसकी एसेट्स की वैल्यू है, तो वो अपनी एसेट्स को बचाए फिर रहा है। भाई आप कह रहे हो नीरव मोदी भाग गया, कोई बात नहीं, भाग गया, उससे क्या फ़र्क पड़ा आप। लेकिन अगर आप देखेंगे उसका इन्वेस्टमेंट था, इन्वेस्टमेंट का जो साइज़ है और जो उसके पीछे उसने मॉर्गेज दे रखी है एसेट्स, उस एसेट्स की वैल्यू कहीं ज़्यादा है और मॉर्गेज की जो लोन ले रखा है उसकी वैल्यू कम है। तो आप गवर्नमेंट तो तुरंत उसको बेच के जो है रिकवरी कर सकती है। So there are the many reasons for the attraction of the company towards the public deposits. The cost of these deposits is the less than, and the rate of interest offered by the bank is the very excess. There is the no need to mortgage the mortgage the assets for the public deposits. Moreover, public deposits are available for a longer time period than the bank loans. For the investors, also these deposits can be the quite useful because the rate of interest offered on these deposits is the higher than the bank interest. And the next is lease financing. Initially, the concept of the lease was the limited to the land only, but for the past few years, ठीक है, पहले क्या होता सिर्फ लैंड के लिए स्पेसिफाइड था, लेकिन पास्ट फ्यू ईयर्स में ऐसा हुआ है लीज फाइनेंसिंग ऑफ द बिकमिंग द ऑपरेशनल इन द इंडस्ट्रियल एरियाज. Lease is a long-term sources of the business finance. Companies can take the necessary business assets on the lease rather than the buying them. क्योंकि देखिए अगर वो बाई करती है तो उसको ज़्यादा पैसा लगेगा और अगर लीज पे लेती है तो उसको कम वैल्यू में हो गया काम. तो कंपनी क्यों चाहेगी कि वो जो है खरीद ले, वो चाहेगी कि वो लीज पे ही ले ले. तो इफ़ द परचेज these fixed assets, they have a pay in the full values. Under the lease agreement, company gets the right to use the assets after making the part payment for it. Under this arrangement, the owners of the assets surrenders the rights to use the assets in the favor of other person in the consideration of the predetermined rent. After the lease period, whether the assets will be returned to the lessor on it will be the retained by the lessee depends on the terms of lease. Thus, the ownership and the use of assets in the case of lease lie in the different hands. In the industrial area, the use of the lease financing started after 1980 during the period of the financial needs of the industrial units also increased due to the raise in the price level. And the short term financing mean the short term there are the basic two parts, banking sources and the non banking sources. Banking sources means there are the banking elements, means the banking sources means short term financing, that is the line of credit, means the credit limit of the business, and then the overdraft facilities provided to business, and the secured loan provided by the bank. And next is discounting bill, that is a bill of exchange, the bills discounting bills provided by the bank. This is the basic short term finance of the, and the banking is the, and the non banking is means the public deposits, short term deposits, trade creditor trade credit, advance from the customers, and the outstanding liabilities is also including the major part of this. Today's we have completing the project financing, and tomorrow we will be discuss the next topic. So if you have any queries, so please ask me, And if you are discussing with me, so you are welcome. Okay, thank you very much. And